So first up, I just keep admitting people as they turn up. We have Professor Caroline Oliver, who's a professor of sociology at the UCL's Institute of Education, wonderful establishment with a newly refurbished barn. And she's working in practice and society as well, co-director of UCL's Migration Research Unit and the Centre for Sociology of Education and Equity. So we're very lucky to have 15 minutes of Caroline's time today. So I'll not take up too much time and hand straight over to Caroline for presentation number 1. Thank you, Caroline. I'll turn my camera and mic off, I think, to save the bandwidth. So over to you, Caroline, when you're ready. Thank you.
I'll just trying to share it, which was simple a minute ago, but now under pressure. Right, here we go. Okay, can you see my starting site? Okay, thank you. Perfect. Thank you for bearing with me there. And also, I'm very grateful to Prof for having me along today. As Luke said, I'm Caroline Oliver. And I've been working on this project around Afghan resettlement and relocation for the last couple of years. It's been a very chaotic and intensive time as per the schemes themselves. Just to say that I am working as I'm PI of a broader team. There are a lot of us working on this. So I'm speaking on behalf of those named on that slide. So the research that I'm talking about today has been funded by the Nuffield Foundation, and basically it aimed to look at the two schemes running, ARAP and ACRS, for supporting those who were arriving in the UK following the evacuation of Kabul in 2021. And of course, since that time, there have been quite a few changes in the revelation of the covert scheme as well. So obviously lots has changed. My research background is looking at experiences of urban and national reception of migrants. And so I was very drawn to these schemes for their kind of unique nature, as I'll explain as we go on. Just to put those schemes into context, that ACRS is part of a broader set of safe and legal routes. Of course, we've got others that include the Ukraine schemes, the visas for British national overseas Hong Kongers, and of course, refugee family reunion, which has come under scrutiny and pausing and closure of that option. And ARAP sits kind of outside of this as its own separate relocation scheme. But I think just putting that into context, this is from the government, and the resettlement and relocation figures are included in blue. So you can actually see that in terms of the grand scheme of things, that the Afghan resettlement, of which the blue is only only comprises part, or Afghans comprise only part of those, is actually fairly small numbers, but does attract perhaps disproportionate attention. Now, our research was looking at how Afghans arriving under those routes are faring once they're in settled accommodation. So initially they were placed in hotels or military estates before then being moved on into settled accommodation in local communities. And our interest is in the intersection of, well, does it matter where they're placed, and does it matter who they are, and how that affects their abilities to get on. We're also interested in their longer term plans and outcomes, but also have been doing research around resettlement among stakeholders who are working often around Ukrainians and Hong Kongers as well, and may have experience of Syrian resettlement and others under UKRS. Now, our research has been mixed methods. So we've been doing quantitative research, including a survey across 5 regions, aiming to elicit responses from a kind of known target of resettled Afghans in those particular areas. And we worked with a team of 20 Afghan peer researchers that we recruited and trained to administer face-to-face surveys. Excuse me, I've got a terribly heavy cold, so just snipping away. The other part has been participatory research with around 150 people or more, because we're still just finalising the research, but that involved looking at the experiences of Afghan women, Afghan young people, Afghan men, and then lots of stakeholders, as I say, who are responsible. So going from local authority resettlement teams and caseworkers through to commission services to migrant community organisations, and including national agencies and departments, including the Ministry of Defence. We also had regional roundtables to feed back some of our findings and sort of see how that sat with many other council resettlement teams. I would say it's still quite early days in the sense that we have quite a lot of insight into what each stream of research shows, but actually we're starting now to synthesize that data and bring that together. Before I go into some of those emerging findings, I do just want to stress something about the context and background of the schemes, because obviously in some ways these are quite unique schemes. In the field of migration studies, they're known as kind of bespoke humanitarian routes that were kind of developed in response to a particular emergency situation that was going on, that might have obviously been predicted, but nevertheless was developing kind of at the moment from 2021 under Operation Pitting, and then under Operation Lazarite, overseen by the Ministry of Defence. There were quite a lot of criticisms around the schemes and processes, operational issues. But in some ways, there's also something quite sort of interesting in the sense that this was a resettlement process that most local authorities across the country were expected to step up to, and they were also quite well funded to do so, receiving funds per individual, but also opportunities for housing support and top up in various ways. Again, quite unique in the sense that the plan was for them to move quite quickly into settled accommodation, but that often took much longer. So some of our families that we spoke to were in hotels for up to 18 months, with obvious impacts in terms of sort of impacts on education and ability to move on independently. As Sarah will talk about, the schemes were operating under this kind of super injunction on the press, and knowledge of the covert resettlement scheme that became public following the data breach revelations. The application for the Afghan resettlement programme closed in July this year, but those that were already accepted were still arriving, although again this is something that is rather shrouded in mystery, as the flights have been paused, and the use of the military estate is being drawn down, and families are expected to leave by the end of November. So the findings that we can share so far, looking at across the survey and across our qualitative research, is that what do we actually know about the Afghans who are resettled here? So the Afghans are working age, generally living with families, often quite large families with children, and overwhelmingly across our streams of research, they felt a sense of safety and huge gratitude to the UK government, and that came across from the women, it came across from the men, it came across from the young people as well. And there's some examples there of quotes from some of the people that we talked to about how what a difference it makes that they can sleep peacefully, and now they know how life can be without having that constant threat over their heads. At the same time, it was striking about how much their lives have changed immensely, for some more than others, but particularly for the young people, a real sense of kind of visceral culture shock or resettlement shock. But particularly for the young people, that was associated with a kind of nervous excitement of all these sort of strange and weird things, and a real sense of embracing opportunities. And Rayhan there talks about, you know, the opportunity for education that's tied up with these feelings of safety and gratitude for their lives. At the same time, it's not to say that there aren't intense pressures that come with resettlement, on as well as the culture shock and the adjustments that families and young people are having to do. There are many families are facing financial precarity. Benefit systems in the UK are set up for two parents working, so some of the families, particularly the large families, are struggling to make ends meet. So in terms of where they're placed around the country, being able to shop in cheaper shops, so Aldi or Lidl's, is really important, as well as being close to proximity to cultural resources and halal shops, in order to be able to feed their families in ways that they would like. Our survey also showed that many are really struggling. So although there's this overwhelming feeling of safety and gratitude and that kind of ontological security, in terms of social connections and having practical support networks, that is for probably about a third of our participants, that is an area of real concern, that many aren't connected, particularly locally, and also struggling with poor mental well-being, and that's also associated, of course, with family separation. And although obviously in the previous slide I was talking about the fact that there's a lot of excitement about the future for the young people, that actually there was also evidence of quite a lot of mental health pressures for the young people, because of the fact that they are, on one hand, recipients of kind of intense family expectations. So for many of the parents, they talked about the fact that their lives may not develop in the ways that they would like, but their children's lives will. So this is putting expectations on the families, but also a huge amount of practical contributions to support parents who may be struggling themselves with mental health or physical health needs, and also many families who are struggling with English. And an example I have here is from Ahmed, who talks about how his father was experiencing terminal illness, but the sense that he shouldn't speak to other people, other Afghans, because he had to keep that private amongst his own family. But at the same time as managing that burden, he also felt this responsibility to look after his siblings and keep everyone's mood up. He also had to help with meetings. The family was split between two houses because of the size of the family. And so he kind of stepped up as at the time as being sort of 18, but having to manage, you know, things like meetings with the council, paying the bills, universal credit applications. So managing the house, managing ill health of parents, and also keeping everyone's mood up, as well as performing incredibly hard well at school, doing meeting needs. He struggled to pass his English GCSE, but then moved into A levels and was actually thriving there. Then the issue around employment, and for the parents, particularly obviously the men, as is common often with refugee employment, evidence of de-skilling, and examples there of a Secret Service officer now lifting boxes, somebody working as as a judge, but actually now going to be a delivery driver. But also one of the things that emerges about the slow pace that they felt was the English classes, and they felt a real frustration between being able, on one hand, to being able to work at their level, and actually not feeling the support because of the slow pace of classes and gaps in between. And then at the same time as balancing employment, there was a lot of, we need to do more research around this, the shifting roles that were occurring in families because of the fact that often the wives weren't speaking English, so they're having to look after all the school issues, often children being in different schools around a locality, and having to manage the logistics of that with working lives as well. That's it for the minute. We have a lot more work to do in terms of synthesizing the research. We plan to bring this together into a final report for the funders for the Nuffield Foundation, as well as launching policy and practice briefs to local authorities. And we would, of course, like to engage in further work with the Afghans that we worked with, to share the results and think about some of the solutions to some of the issues that we've emerged. Thank you for bearing with me, and my thoughts are a little fuzzy at the moment, but I hope that's helpful to give an insight into the work that we've been doing. And please do reach out to me to receive a copy of the final report. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. That was fantastic. Really, really interesting, and lots to kind of digest.